and there's a black guy down. It looks like he's been shot and he's dead.
It is the story that's gripped Central Florida and the country for months.
He said that it had been an altercation, and that my son was dead.
I don't understand. As a mother, my heart is broken.
The death of Trayvon Martin has exposed issues of race relations many thought were over, yet others say they still deal with each day.
When I'm walking down the street, that more eyes are pointed at me.
We want justice now! We want justice now!
If I had a son, he'd look like Trayvon. I think every parent in America should be able to understand why it is absolutely imperative that we investigate every aspect of this.
Tonight, we examine the state of race relations in Central Florida.
I am here because this is an issue for all of us, not just one part or another part. It's just an issue for us as humans.
What's really happening in our community? How do we look at each other, treat each other, and what could be done to eliminate the color boundaries? Race, a community conversation.
Good evening, and thanks for joining us for a WESH-TV News special, Race, a Community Conversation. I'm Jim Payne.
And I'm Sion Rhodes. In the next hour, we'll be talking with leaders from across Central Florida and all walks of life about an issue that has gripped our community, our country for years, but now brought into the spotlight by a recent local and tragic event.
That event, the shooting death of Trayvon Martin, has spurred rallies, marches, and protests, and has people nationwide questioning our laws and legal system. But deeper than that, it's opened a dialogue about race relations, both perceived and real.
And we begin with the event that got us to this point, the night of February 26th in the backyard of a Seminole County neighborhood.
911, do you need police, fire, medical?
Maybe both. I'm not sure. There's just someone screaming outside.
It began as a quick trip to the convenience store for some candy and an iced tea. But in the dark and rain of February 26th, 2 lives would be forever altered.
Sanford Police Department.
Hey, we've had some break-ins in my neighborhood, and there's a real suspicious guy. It's Retreat View Circle.
All right, sir. What is your name?
George Zimmerman.
George Zimmerman, 28 years old and living in a gated community in Sanford, a self-proclaimed neighborhood watch volunteer. Tired of the recent rash of break-ins, Zimmerman had taken it upon himself to patrol the retreat at Twin Lakes and call police every time he saw something he thought was off.
I'm with the neighborhood watch, and we've had some burglaries and vandalism lately.
But on that Sunday night, Zimmerman's patrol included an added element, a handgun. The weapon would make all the difference in the confrontation George Zimmerman was about to have.
911, do you need police, fire, medical?
Police, I just heard a shot right behind my house.
Oh my God, he shot the person. He just said he shot the person.
17-year-old Trayvon Martin from Miami was in Sanford for the week visiting his dad. He bought 2 things at the store, a sweet tea and some Skittles. On the phone with his girlfriend, Trayvon made his way back home, but it was raining. So he took cover on porches and under awnings in the neighborhood, and he pulled the hood of his sweatshirt on to keep himself dry.
Yeah, a dark hoodie, like a gray hoodie, and either jeans or sweatpants and white tennis shoes.
In the midst of these porches and backyards, George Zimmerman and Trayvon Martin would meet.
There's someone screaming. I just heard gunshots. So you think he's yelling help?
Yes.
All right, what is your number?
There's gunshots.
You just heard gunshots?
Yes.
How many?
Just one.
What they said, what they did, no one is truly clear about. But we do know their meeting would have a deadly outcome that is ricocheted through the nation.
Justice now!
We are! Who do we want it for?
Trayvon! We are! Trayvon!
Justice is something that will be answered in the courts.
We are here tonight to talk about the bigger issue that brought this tragedy forth, race. Joining us tonight for this important conversation, leaders from our community. Michael Blake, the mayor of Cocoa.
Rabbi David Kay from Congregation Ohev Shalom.
Maritza Sands, the president of Latino Leadership Incorporated.
Ali Braswell, president of the Central Florida Urban League.
Jeff Triplett, the mayor of Sanford.
Cynthia Slater, president of the Volusia County chapter of the NAACP.
And Glenn Leong, past president of the Asian American Chamber of Commerce. Thank you all for being here with us tonight. Now, this week, WESH-TV conducted an exclusive poll of people living across Central Florida. We wanted to know where we stand on the issue of race relations.
800 people from all walks of life, racial and ethnic backgrounds answered our telephone survey questions. The first question we asked, does Central Florida have a race problem? Overwhelmingly, we found whites and blacks alike believe we do. And the numbers were pretty even. 73% of blacks and 72% of whites believe that some sort of race issue still exists here.
Others are kind of like, well, I'd kind of rather deal with, white or Hispanic or whatever the case may be, or even blacks as well. I'd rather deal with another, African American. So, I've heard that, and it's more of a feeling. Like I said, it's not really anything that I've heard of, like direct comment. It's just something of that kind of unspoken law there.
It's a generational thing that at some point this country is going to become one, and might not be in my lifetime, but I'm sure I feel comfortable that it's going to eventually happen.
Let's open this up. Allie Braswell, your reaction to the poll numbers.
Well, I think when you take a look at the poll numbers, they're telling you the truth of what's going on in our region. I think a lot of people are concerned about it, and this is a conversation that for a number of years has been long overdue to have. And when you look at the numbers and they're so evenly divided by 72 to 73% think there is a problem, then we have to start to begin to have a conversation on how do we fix that problem.
Maritza?
I feel that a lot of people, they are scared of saying if there is a problem or not, because when we talk about race, it's still a taboo talking about it. You don't know if you're going to say something and people are going to become your enemy, or they're going to say, why is she saying that? So I think that it's a very touchy subject.
Cynthia, do you think people are still kind of dancing around the issue?
Well, I think for the most part, people don't want to talk about it. I'm so glad that we're having this conversation and this dialogue, because it's way overdue. In the communities that I live in, we still have issues with young black men being targeted. So I think this is something that we need to address, and we need to meet this issue head on.
And talk to us, Mayor Michael Blake of Cocoa, about how the problems of getting that conversation started. Why are people so quick to not want to have that conversation?
I think sometimes the past what has taken place in the past is sometimes difficult to deal with, but clearly as the demographics in America change, so will the attitude of America. Being an 8th grade social studies teacher, my students, we constantly collaborate about this issue of race, and I constantly remind them, even though we may come from different tribes, we belong to one race, that's the human race, so we're all God's people, but through communication and cooperation, we can resolve this issue.
Rabbi Kay, you want to talk about some different tribes, and you want to talk about people oppressed. I think we have it nailed pretty much right here. How do we take this conversation and make people, I don't know, kind of confront their own insecurities about it? What's the best way to do that?
To be honest, I think the poll numbers show very clearly that a significant majority of people in our community think there's a problem. The fact that, as other members have already said, that those conversations aren't being had is something that teachers and parents and community leaders have to make sure actually does take place. I have a son in high school, and he's amazed that there's a problem at all, because as far as he's concerned, the kids that he goes to school with, it's racially, culturally diverse, and he doesn't understand why his parents broke down and cried when an African American was elected president of the United States. Never mind your politics, the fact that could actually happen, we never thought it was going to happen in our lifetime. Parents having conversations with their children, teachers having conversations with their classes, and people of diverse backgrounds having conversations with each other like this is where it begins.
Rabbi Kay, jumping off of what you said there about the election in 2008 of President Barack Obama, I think when that happened, we started hearing this word post-racial. You guys are familiar with that term that suddenly popped up. Yes. And is that part of the problem, that suddenly we think because in 2008 we've elected the first black president that we don't have a race problem anymore, and therefore people don't want to talk about it, don't think it's an issue? Cynthia, what do you think?
I don't know where terms come from all of a sudden when something happens. But this post-racial terminology that was brought about after the election, there is no post-racial. Until there is discrimination and racism is diminished in society, that's when we'll have post-racial harmony. But because we elected a black president does not mean that racism is not alive. It's alive and well.
And Glenn, you're a lawyer.
Yes.
Words are important when you're formulating your arguments, and it seemed to me, especially in the wake of the Trayvon Martin case, people were saying things that they thought other people understood and using words that they thought other people understood. But a lot of times, even when we talk about the word problem and dealing with the problem, well, the problem to one person might be something completely to the next person, and sometimes that impedes progress.
Absolutely. It's all about perspective and where we come from. As a criminal defense lawyer, for example, I have many African American clients. They talk about DWB. Now, if I ask your audience, what is DWB? Half of my other clients, who may be of other races, don't understand, and that would stand for driving while black. So what we have are several ethnic communities. They live in these strange parallel universes, and I'm glad WESH-TV and other community leaders are shining a light on this issue, but this is just a start to tackle these problems.
And I think you're right. We've got to get people talking. Well, let's point out that WESH-2 invited numerous county leaders, city leaders, education, school district leaders to be here, and in no uncertain terms, they told us it was too hot to handle. They didn't want to talk about race and that they didn't have a race problem, not their issue. So thank you, especially to our mayors for being here. And Mayor Triplett, I want to talk to you. Politics, racial politics, not something most people campaign on. Something, though, that your city has now had to confront head on. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, it's uncomfortable for people to speak of, and we've been in a very uncomfortable position over the last couple of months, and you go, and I keep saying that word because it is. I've been in some very awkward positions where I've felt like I shouldn't have been there. But you go and you listen, and as I say, I've said a couple of times, is that you can't walk in someone else's shoes, but you can walk next to them and find out what is truly going on, what is so significant to that person. We're pretty good about putting castles around us and staying in our comfort zone, and we've totally gotten out of that now and figured out a lot of different things, and I've spent a lot of time listening to a lot of things that I had no idea that someone standing next to me would have that same feeling, or would have the feeling that they were telling me about the police department or about me as a Caucasian man, that's scared that what I might do or what I might say, and I may have those a little tweakle of a feeling about that also. So it's an uncomfortable position to be in, but I think this is a great opportunity for us truly to talk about it.
And to your credit, in the wake of the shooting, you were out there. You didn't have to, your form of government is different than people think of the mayor as being the person in charge. That's not the way that Sanford is run. But as the figurehead, so to speak, you deliberately put yourself out there in all the events that were going on in the wake of the shooting. How did that change how you thought about things overall? It was an eye opener. As you say, the form of government that we have, we shake hands and kiss babies and make some policies about land use, and then all of a sudden you're thrown into the spotlight, and there's a lot of people looking at your every word and what you were thinking or doing or saying, and I think it's very important as leaders that you stand up and say, this is my community. These people are my people. They either voted for me or they didn't. They like me or they don't, which is fine. But they're still part of the community. And you just, all of us up here took an oath to be out in front and to sit at the table and help make decisions on the direction that everything was going at that time.
All right, this week, WESH-TV conducted an exclusive poll of people living all across Central Florida. We wanted to know where we stand on the issue of race relations.
800 people from all walks of life, racial and ethnic backgrounds answered our telephone survey questions. The first question we asked, does Central Florida have a race problem? Overwhelmingly, we found that blacks and whites alike believe that we do.
And the numbers are pretty even. 73% of blacks and 72% of whites believe that some sort of race issue still exists here. All right, we also want to let you know that people are right now logging on to Facebook page at our WESH.com site and letting us know what they're thinking about this conversation.
Yeah, Michael has posted on our WESH-TV Facebook page, I honestly think Central Florida has a race problem. I am not racist, but do know a lot of others around me that are. Everyone is made to love each other, not hate each other. So what? We were made of different colors.
And Shakita posts, I believe for the most part, hate is taught. I've seen and heard of stories where parents have kept their kids from playing with other kids at the playground because of skin color. Very sad. I also believe it can be the result of an experience, she writes. In some cases, people just dislike people for no apparent reason.
So where does this all come from? I mean, what's been your life experiences? Rally?
Well, I think it comes from being taught, like just as the posting on Facebook suggests. A lot of times when we're dealing with tough economic situations, we're always looking for someone else to blame, someone else to point a finger to. But I think when you think about the town of Sanford, it has issues all the way back to when it was Goldsboro, Florida, that some people are still pent up and hung up on the indiscretions of a few others years ago that are still impacting people today. When you take a look at that, that is an opportunity to dialogue. Many people will say, well, that wasn't me. But you have to understand, I think Mayor Triplett said it really well, walk next to a person and understand their perception. I like to share one time I was walking down the street, and I'm walking and I'm dressed in a suit, kind of like the mayor's here. And we did not plan this, by the way. But you know, you're walking down the street and I'm having a young lady approach me and she's carrying a purse. And she moved that purse to the opposite side of her body of where I would pass. And it bothered me that she would think that I would pose a threat. But that is an unconscious thought that has been taught over years. And that's what we have to work towards, having the dialogue to tear down these stereotypes, tear down these things that people misjudge other people just based upon the color of their skin, and begin to understand that we have more in common than we have apart. But we need to tear down these barriers that prevent a certain segment of the population, the groups that I serve, the community, that says, you know, you are equal and you can do better. And we need to do a lot like our kids. When you look at our children, they don't see color a lot of times, but that's because we've done a good job. Now we as parents need to help get there too.
How many of you have had a similar experience?
Of course.
Yeah? How'd it make you feel?
Well, you have to rise for the occasion. Identical to Allie, tough times require tough measures sometimes. And the tough measures, it's a learning lesson. At school, sir, we give you a lesson and we give you the test. In life, you get the test first and then you get the lesson. And that's the beautiful thing about this. But I'm a firm believer through education, it's a great equalizer. We can communicate, cooperate, and collaborate. And we must open up that door of opportunity for everyone. We all are God's children. And the beautiful thing about this, if we don't, we know what's going to happen. Here we are. And I think I commend you all for doing this, as well open this door of opportunity so that we can exchange this dialogue. That speaks volumes.
We're going to continue this conversation next, where this issue begins.
And how we begin breaking down the color boundaries, especially with children.
When they come in the world, they don't look at you as being white, black, Hispanic, Asian, or whatever. They just look at you as being somebody that loves them. So along the way, somehow they change. And I think it's probably a taught or learned behavior, because you're not born with that. I know you're not born with that. When my granddaughter was like 6 years old, She came home from school one day and she said, "Oh, I wish I was white so bad." And we was like, "Well, why do you want to be white?" And she said, "Because, it just seems like the little girls in her class, like the teacher just kind of favored." And I said, "Don't ever think like that. You be the best child that you can be. You be the best student that you," and that was at 6. So that tells me that, a whole lot, we've had some changes in this world, but a whole lot of things haven't changed.
Welcome back to our WESH-TV special, Race, a Community Conversation. The story you just heard is straight from a family right here in Central Florida.
And it's reflective of the comments we've heard over and over when talking with you about the issue of race in our community.
And the overwhelming answer was it starts at home. Now, Mayor Blake, you have a unique perspective on this. You're a mayor, you're an educator, you're a coach and a teacher. So what do parents need to do? If I put a 3-year-old in front of you right now, what do you say to that 3-year-old?
What do you say with that 3-year-old? All education takes place first at home. The bond that you have with your parents, from the child being birthed by the mother to the cuddling, the nurturing, the embracing of that, and also the relationship, the communication. I keep going back to communication because through communication, you break down all those barriers. Communication and education. That's the only way we can resolve this in a wholesome way.
But what do you say?
You say, the first thing you say to your child, "How was your day?"
Mm-hmm.
That's the first thing you say to your child. How was your day? Because then that opens the door for other opportunities and conversations. Tell me what your day was like. It's important that you have that dialogue with your children because you need to know what's going on inside of them, what they're thinking. Because being an 8th grade social studies teachers, kids act one way at school and sometimes they act totally different when they're at home. So the key is to have that relationship and talk with your child because that's your greatest investment. And they are our future. And that's what I tell my children. Hey, you have to get a quality education. Why? Because I'm going to need a job. You'll need a job when I retire. I want to make sure there's a Social Security system for me to be there.
And I feel like the conversation, though we may not want it to be different in black households and white households, we have to admit the conversation about race that takes place is very different. Whereas I was growing up being told just focus on being better, like that woman told her granddaughter, don't worry about the teacher preferring someone else over you. Focus on being the best you can because you're going to have to be better because they may look at you differently. Whereas my white counterparts growing up were just maybe not even told anything like that, or just told everyone's equal, don't judge anyone, and that's it.
Yeah, that's how it went in our house.
And so I want to talk to you, Maritza. I know that you had, a specific story you were telling us just now about how you addressed it with your kids.
Something that is very interesting is that the United States, it's not only black and white. Here we are the newcomers, that maybe they say the new kids on the block, that it's the Latino community is growing. And we are going through the same challenges because we have blonde hair, blue eyes, dark skin, light skin. So we go through the same challenges as well. And when I moved here with my daughters, they were small, something that I practiced with them, and I was very, very strict with them, that the description of your friend, I didn't want to hear the nationality, the color of that person. I didn't want that you was playing with Jessica and Jessica was the black girl. Jessica is Jessica, and that is something that we as parents, we have to start at home. I don't want you putting your nationality as your last name, so that's something that we have to start practicing in our house too. So as parents, as we have all said, everything starts at home.
And Allie, you were telling a story about a pink dress.
Yeah, I was with some 8-year-olds, and they were talking about playing with each other. And the mother said, well, who are you playing with? I was playing with the girl in the pink dress. Now, it happened to be two different it was an African-American young girl wearing the pink dress, and it was a Caucasian young girl wearing jeans. But they did not describe each other by the color of their skins. And I think that's taught by the parents, similar to what Maritza was saying. We had to teach our kids, but, let's talk about the underlying issue. There is a divide. There is two different conversations that go on often, that you got to be better, you got to strive to get past it. And I think where we have to do is to deal with that and say that, really, we all are equal. But we have to have equal opportunity and equal access. And when we begin to see that, then parents can change that conversation. One of the things that came out after Trayvon Martin's death was the conversation. Have you had that conversation? Well, I'll be very honest. I've had that conversation with my 16, 20-year-old, and 24-year-old son. They say you need to dress a certain way and you need to have your attitude right so that you can be respected and seen at the table.
What's the conversation? How does it go?
The conversation is you need to make sure that you're dressing in a manner so that you do not cause suspicion upon yourself or that you're representing a stereotype that could put you into suspicion with the police department. It's making sure that you represent yourself well and that you do your best. It is a conversation that I'm sure happens, but we also put a connotation on that because there is this thought that is permeated in our community that a young African-American male may be up to no good if he dresses a certain way.
And Cynthia, I want to ask you, how do you take the conversation from, sometimes people say colorblind as if that's a good thing, and it's not necessarily, because you want people to recognize other people's differences, but not say that that makes them less than, but just acknowledge it's a part of them, of who they are. It's important to recognize that. So how do you shift the conversation? Don't pay attention to anyone's color, but.
Well, absolutely. When people say that they're colorblind, well, when you walk up to a person, the first thing you see is their color, their race. And so one of the things that we need to look at is not the person on the outside, but who you are from within. I taught my daughter when she was young, the golden rule, you do unto others as you would have them do unto you. You treat people how you want to be treated, and there are no exceptions. And so I think the main thing is making sure that you respect you respect their culture, and if you don't understand the culture, there's nothing wrong with asking, why do you do a certain thing, or what can I do? What can I learn from your culture? Help me to understand. I think the conversation, we need more conversation as far as different cultures and accepting people for who they are.
I still have a son at home. He's 19 years old. And we have had a lot of conversations about the Trayvon Martin case since it happened. Mayor Triplett, I know you have two sons. Aside from asking you, Dad, why are you out all the time now? Why aren't you home anymore? What has the conversation been like in your household?
Hey, we've obviously spent a lot of time talking to the kids, both my wife and I, about what's going on, and I want to be the one that's explaining to them what is going on. I don't want no offense, but I don't want you all telling my son what's transpired, because it's not always right.
We try to be right.
We
strive to be right.
We spent a lot of time about the issue. Both my boys go to Goldsboro Elementary. Well, we all know Goldsboro. My wife and I made that choice for a lot of reasons. One, because the city of Sanford has made some great moves in the past, and we placed a school in there it's mostly African American. I mean, it is in the heart of Goldsboro, and so there's another aspect of that also, because there's a lot of diversity in that community, and they don't see it. And I think he said it properly when he said, we should learn a lesson from our children, because they don't see it like we do, like our parents did. We spend a lot of time teaching our children to respect, and it's all about, there's a whole lot of first appearances that go into the first meeting of two people. So, you show respect until you're disrespected, basically, is the way it should be. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't matter, there's no color in that.
Your kids getting a good education there?
Awesome. Perfect.
See, and
I got to give a shout out, the progress reports came out, and my oldest one did excellent. So,
he's throwing that out.
Hopefully he's smiling right now.
I think that shows you that kids can come into a school and work together, then why can't we as adults? We need to come together and understand that, we have differences and there are things that have happened. But just like the mayor did, place your children in the schools. Let's not run away from the schools. Let's improve all of the schools. Let's get, education is the key. That is, when I was coming up, I'm a native-born Sanford. I haven't lived there, so please don't get me. But I was born in Sanford, so I understand the story and the struggle. I understand the story and the struggle between white and black. I understand the separation, the desire to separate. But, what I did as I learned as I went on, much like what the mayor said, my parents taught me to respect other people for who they are rather than what they look like. They taught me to give equal opportunity. to people. And I think that's the key. But kids, they get it, and unless a parent is teaching or people are teaching them differently. I think what the young lady said on the piece that you played is they don't come here with biases. We kind of subconsciously plant them and allow them to proliferate. And we do that in our media, we do that in our entertainment, we do that in our communities. So we have to police ourselves as well.
I want to share with you some more of our exclusive WESH-TV survey of Central Floridians. We asked a critical question about perception, specifically, just how often does a person's skin color affect the way that you see them?
Most of our respondents said for them that skin color is not a factor. 73% of blacks and 77% of whites told us that skin color is almost never a factor when it comes to dealing with others.
After the 9/11 attacks and everywhere, people are on high alert. They notice, I think, race more than they should sometimes after things like that happen.
I think the color of someone's skin doesn't make a difference in how people perceive people. I think it's their actions that cause people to react differently.
Those are high numbers.
Yeah, and I'm going to take a little bit of an issue with these polling numbers, because I think sometimes people say the answer that they want people to hear. Mm-hmm. How much of that do you think is going on here? Anybody?
I think a lot.
A lot.
Yeah. Me too.
My son, one of the conversation that we had, one of the first conversations that we had, was to admit the reality that if he had been wearing a hoodie and walking through the same neighborhood, going from door to door because it was raining, the odds are he would not have been a person of interest to anybody. I would love to believe that in nearly 3/4 of the time that people encounter someone, they don't make any assumptions based on their race or their ethnicity or their apparent cultural background. But I think we do, and I think the sooner that we admit that we do, the better we can have the conversations we need to have.
Glenn, it kind of adds to this idea of hear no evil, see no evil. People want to believe that we are in this somewhat perfect post-racial society, but not necessarily so.
Correct. If you ask many pollsters about the numbers, people put on their happy public face, and it's an aspiration. Let's all hold hands and sing Kumbaya. I want to add another layer to the conversation. Sometimes some of what we call the racist feelings, they actually happen within our own communities. For example, I'm part Asian, and if you're acting a certain way, you might be called acting too white or a banana as a pejorative term. Sometimes within the African community, they might say, hey, why are you acting that way? Is it, if you're too educated or acting too successful, then you're accused of being white. Isn't that right?
Mm-hmm. That's correct. Mm-hmm.
So we also have to focus within our own sub-communities. And you've heard the saying that it takes a village to raise a child. We've been talking for several minutes about the importance of our families and our parents, raising our children properly, but you also have to look at the influence of the peers and what our schools, coaches, and educators can do to help guide our children.
Yeah, but what you're asking is for people to be really courageous and confront their peers. That's a tough thing to do.
Absolutely. No one wants to be out there by themselves. As I say, I'm a slim 302 pounds right about now, and I don't want to be out there on that 10-pound branch by myself either. But someone has to take that initiative to lead the charge. And sometimes you can be a hero, and sometimes the other choice that you may have. But it must start somewhere. It has to start. And it really has to start from within yourself. Because as I tell my children this, my students, when they need lunch money, they don't go to a teacher that they can identify. All my students come just to see me so that they can have lunch, because you can clearly tell that if a kid needs assistance, as a teacher, I must motivate this child so that he or she passed the FCAT. And do I stop because that child may be of one ethnicity compared to another? No. I have to feed all my children because they represent our school, they represent our community, and they represent the American way of life. That's what I believe in.
All right, we know that viewers are participating online at WESH.com, submitting questions for the panel, and we have one right now.
Kent asks, do you believe that racism is institutionalized? Allie, what do you think?
I believe in our culture, we allow it to continue to foster. And when you don't go out and begin to talk about it and treat it and deal with it, it grows, and it takes tipping points like the shooting of Trayvon Martin for us to get back to a point of where it starts to show its ugly side, where it's rage and it's anguish. I think when you think about some of the things, as we talked about Goldsboro, the town of Goldsboro, for those who don't know, was a small African-American town that was annexed, and Sanford is the result of that. And a lot of people are still upset about that. So when you think about some of the things that have happened years ago, they are institutionalized. They're in our culture. So how do you begin to deal with that? You talk about it. You begin to share about it. You begin to learn the experiences. I remember one time when I was going through some training where they talked about you need to know what you don't know. And a lot of people make decisions based upon what they have heard rather than to know a true experience. I think what Glenn said when you talked about being too articulate as an African American, you get accused of being white, or if you're successful, you get accused of being outside of yourself. But we have painted in our society that success takes on a Caucasian skin. And that's something that we need to change, and I believe media can help with that. When you look at the programming that we see on our televisions, we need to show examples of successful people and careers, and in that programming we need to have shows that show people in different things other than an African American being portrayed as a criminal or being apprehended. Even on the news programs, I noticed a disproportion sometimes in the number of African Americans that are shown, as opposed to other ethnicities being shown. So we can begin to change that institutionalization of the thought that a person of a dark hue and skin is having challenge or is up to no good. One of the other misperceptions, and not to go on, but one of the other misperceptions is that most African Americans are on some type of assistance. Well, I think we need to do the statistics and take a look. That is not true. I believe a recent presidential candidate stated that in a certain state that he was in Iowa, that the majority of African Americans were on the welfare rolls. Well, if you took a look in that state, that was not true. It was 70-something% were white Caucasian Americans on the TANF rolls and receiving assistance, and very little were African American. So it's those stereotypes that lead to institutionalized ideas that are then broadcast and shared that begin to take back these biases that are then taught in our families. And so we, as a larger global community, can begin to change that.
We have another question from our live wire at WESH.com, and the question is for the panel, wanting to know an example of racism that you have experienced in your lives. We've heard a little bit about that, but Mayor Blake, do you care to share?
Oh, absolutely. To piggyback off Allie, I myself sometimes, a big stature individual like myself, 6'5", when I'm walking through the hallway, may it be someone of a female, of course, of a different ethnicity walking toward me, they will drop their head or grab their purse or walk further away from me. And I know myself, I do not present myself that way, but clearly beyond a shadow of a doubt, I experienced that. But that's just the way of the world. But my thing to answer that question is, I just have to prove myself on who I am and let my skills and qualities and my performance speak for itself. And that's what MLK King talks about. What do you do when you're taken out of your comfort zone? How do you act when you're out of your comfort zone? Will determine the character of a person as an individual. Is it fair? It's not always fair, but it's the way of life. But we must, goes back to education, I keep harping on that. We must address that.
Cynthia, you're on the other end of the size spectrum, so to speak, from the mayor over here. But I'm sure you've experienced your share of uncomfortable and unfortunate situations as well. Do you just kind of wait for the message to come out to decide how to deal with it or whether to deal with it at that point?
I'm from Daytona. I was born and raised there, lived there all my life. So went through segregation. One of the biggest problems that I had growing up, and even as an adult, was going into stores, into the department stores, and the salesperson following you, thinking you're going to steal, and that's not the case at all. And that's one of the things that I think they portray African American women as thieves. And that's just not true at all.
Does it still happen to you now?
No, it hasn't happened in a while, no.
Or there could be the other extreme, which I know many of my friends, myself, have experienced, which is you're not even serviced at all. You're just ignored because what are you doing here?
You're not ignored. That's
so
right. Absolutely.
There's two extremes to that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. So, Glenn, what do you think? Well, we're going to take a quick break, actually. We'll get to you in a second.
All right. We'll be back with more of Race, a Community Conversation right after this. You're watching our special broadcast here on WESH-TV, Race, a Community Conversation.
And we're hearing from a lot of you on our Facebook page, participating in a live wire discussion on WESH.com as well. Cindy writes, I believe with all my heart that two people who had not been taught to be respectful of others came together at a terrible time and great tragedy occurred. Two families suffering more than anyone should have to bear. But please stop this racial tension in this nice city of ours. To the media, she writes, please do your part to stop the sensationalism. And she writes to the NAACP, Jesse Jackson, Al Sharpton, go home, let justice take its course, and let Trayvon's parents grieve the death of their beautiful son. A lot of people feeling that this wasn't going to be a major issue, and it became such because of so-called outsiders like the Reverend Jackson and Reverend Sharpton. And they're blaming us. They're blaming the media for stirring up a hornet's nest and stirring the pot. So I want to ask you, Mayor Triplett, what do you have to say in response to that, seemingly resident of your town saying, everyone go away, let us alone?
I mean,
you agree with them, I guess, in part.
I think it's time for us to heal, and there's everybody has their purpose in life, and some say that they came in to bring this to cause, the original charge was, put Mr. Zimmerman in jail. And that's happened, and it's justice, and so the justice system has to work itself out. This is as we've talked, this is like that old wound that has been lingering for many years, since 1911, when for some people about Goldsboro and annexing, and this has almost been the scrape of the scab off of it, and so this wound is opened back up. And I think it's time for us to have this dialogue. Listen, this isn't truly. It's not about the city of Sanford. This is any small city, any large city in America, and obviously in the world, because we're talking. It's gone worldwide. So although everyone wants to say that this is the city of Sanford, this is two individuals that came together, and if it were 2 minutes difference, we would not be having this conversation. If it was 2 minutes different, or if Zimmerman went this way and Mr. Martin went that way, we would not be having this conversation. So out of tragedy, a tragic event, let's take the opportunity.
Exactly. Well, we talked earlier about how we can work with our young people, our kids, and talk to them and get them to see the world in kind of opaque shades, for lack of a better phrase. In order for us to move forward as a society, do we almost have to have an older generation just die off? No, I'm serious. I mean, you laugh, but and some of that old way of thinking to go with them as well.
I think there has to be some of the. I don't mean to jump in, but I think there has to be some forgiveness. I think that some of the things that are in people's hearts, that the police officers weren't treated right in the 50s and 60s, or this happened, or this person did this wrong to them. There has to be, that story needs to be told, and there needs to be some forgiveness, and look to the future for that. You've got to let it off of your heart a little bit, and I don't think that's really truly been allowed in a long time. I don't think that conversation has happened in a long time.
You wanted to jump in, Maritza?
I'm sorry.
Yes, when we talk about the older generation, I have experienced that if I am quiet in front of a group of older people, I am accepted. And I don't know why they find out that I have an accent, because I don't have an accent, right? When I talk to them, and then they say, whoops, you're Latina? And I am like, yes, and I am proud of it. But people, automatically, that makes them change the way that I was treated before.
They literally transform in their seat. You watch
Completely.
it, you see it, yeah.
Yes, completely. It's like I am a different person. And I have an example. When I moved here, I was filling up an application and I put white, because when I left Puerto Rico, I thought that I was a white person. Because in Puerto Rico, you are black or white. So I put the white, and the lady said, you are not white. And I said, so then what I am? And she's like, I don't know. And I said, so put a place to put beige, because then I am a beige person. But that is still happening. It's happened 20-something years ago, but we are still living that. The students that come to me, they say that they are treated different in the school because they are Latinos, because they have an accent, because they dress different. So it's still there. It's still there.
And how do we have the conversation, Cynthia, about healing that Mayor Triplett addressed without people feeling that they're being slighted? You know, I wasn't around, my grandparents didn't own slaves. Well, but my grandparents and great-grandparents, you know, and great-great-greats were. Mm-hmm. But that's not us. That's not us. What do we do to move beyond that conversation to get to this healing point?
I think sometimes we have to let things go. We have to let it go, but at the same time embrace each other. When we talk about what happened 50, 60 years ago, you're releasing all of that, whatever anger that is that's built inside of you. And so I believe that once you talk about it, you accept it and you let it go and you move forward. And we have to move forward with all of the things. When I was a kid, my parents told me some horror stories, but that doesn't stop me from not liking you, you know. So, but they didn't teach me to hate. They told me the story, the history of what they went through, but not to hate a person. And I think once you tell the story and you accept what happened, but we have to move on and accept and embrace each other for who we are.
Yeah, but it's hard to be honest. Sometimes you fool yourself probably more than anybody else out there. Mm-hmm. It's hard to look in the mirror and say, you know what, I got to get over this. It's tough. Yeah,
I just want to share something. After the Trayvon Martin shooting, we got in the NAACP's office, we got bombarded with calls from racists just screaming at us, saying the ugliest things that I could ever, you can't even say it. And I had the secretary, the office worker, to save those messages. Because every time I walk in that office, I want to play it to hear just how ugly things are. And it just makes you want to care more about the cause. You have to get over. There's some things that you just got to get over it. And don't call. I want to call them back, do a *69 and call them back and say, "Do you want to come to our office and talk about this?"
No, because 99% of those are under a false name or anonymous blog post. That's the only way people can be honest in today's day. That's what so they need to look deep inside themselves, and you need to be able to look yourself in the mirror every morning and see who you are. And unfortunately, those people, I don't think they're seeing a very good person. And so we can't give them any credence. It's people like us and our generation and our families that can take this to the different level.
Let me ask you something, Mayor. I think one of the defining moments early on involved you at the Al Sharpton rally at the park downtown when you got up to speak to the crowd, and we have some video of that, and the crowd shouted you down, and they wouldn't let you speak. And Congresswoman Corinne Brown came up onto the stage, and there she is right there, and she's basically telling the crowd, show some respect. This is the mayor, and he's showing courage being here. First of all, what did that mean to you, and what did it mean to this whole process?
She totally changed the dynamics of the crowd and the situation, because it was truly going down a different path. I think I feel in my heart, to be honest, that it was going down a path of the anger was truly starting to come out, and I called, Corey Brown and I, we've got a pretty good relationship. We're on different sides of the spectrum because I'm a banker and she doesn't like bankers. But I called her and told her, I just have to show you the utmost amount of respect. And I said, I love you as a person for what you did, because she took something and she didn't have to do that. She did not have to do that. But she said, this is the guy that is working for you. He's flown up to D.C. He's done the things. He's trying to get the answers that you all are here looking for. So that was truly a reach across as far across the racial lines as you can get, being one of the few, Caucasian white people standing on that stage. Mm-hmm. So it was something special to me, and I think she really showed her character, no question.
Well, Mayor, I was there with you, and I'm here to tell you, your being there sent a message of healing and reconciliation, of leadership that shows. As you said, you were there to kiss babies when you took mayor and passed land use policy, but you took leadership by the hand, and now it's time to take leadership that step forward to where we join hands and we begin to solve this. We begin to have the dialogue that we start here tonight that says, yes, I'm different, but come learn about me. Yeah. When we start to make, one of the things I've always thought about, when you start to invite people to your home for a party, look across that aisle at that party and say, you know what, I'm going to invite everybody in here to come to my house for a party. We find out that we all burn hamburgers, and then in the South, we all love collard greens. And when through that meal and through that fellowship, we begin to bring together that dialogue that tears down, like Cynthia said, those old things that are still burning that cause us issue, so that the next tipping point doesn't become a powder keg that leads to the call for justice having to have people march in the streets. But that people will do the right thing because it's about all of us.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I personally think I admire you, Mayor Triplett, because through your leadership, the citizens stayed calm. No outbreak, no riot, sir. It could have easily crossed over into that barrier. But through your commitment and dedication to representing all the citizens as being the mayor, loved by many, hated by few, we would like to think that. But because of that, your presence, your mere presence, and to stand for justice, even when there is no justice, you're still there. And you're like that lady with the little blindfold with the scale. Give justice the chance, and it will persevere. It may not persevere when we want it to be immediate, but it does prevail. It will. So you stand tall, young man, stand proud, like we all said.
Well, thank you.
Yes, sir. And I'm glad to see all the citizens of the great state of Florida, including my county as well, to remain cool, calm, and collective. And through a lot of prayer, it did change.
And it says a lot, Freddie, that we had zero arrests. Everybody was so afraid, and there was so much fear involved in it. But in working together with a lot of different groups, with your groups and the NAACP and everybody that came in, that it was peaceful, and people actually walked out of our city saying, "Man, you got a great city here. We're thinking about coming back. Maybe spend some extra time and be able to have a meal here."
That's exactly, right. And I know your downtown business owners would clearly appreciate
Buy local,
that.
man. Buy local.
Buy local.
Absolutely.
That's going to have to be the final word. I want to thanks so much to our distinguished panel for sharing your thoughts and your insights.
And also to all of you watching at home and participating online, submitting your comments and questions so we could further the dialogue.
And we want to hear what you have to say. You can leave your comments on the WESH-2 Facebook page. We'll be airing some of them on WESH-2 News at 11 and on later newscasts.
And thanks to all of you again for watching and tuning in for Race, a Community Conversation.